Okay, hi David.
How
Thanks for
you
taking the
doing?
time to talk to me today.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to start just by reading your bio. Um, Grammy nominated David Chesky is a composer of orchestral works, operas, and ballets, an author of children's books, a jazz pianist, and a world renowned innovator of audio technologies. Critics describe his music as highly individualistic, memorable, dynamic, and exotic. David Chesky has earned great respect for his fresh and unique approach to musical compositions, which span the jazz and classical genres. Chesky developed his own style of composition, heralded as urban orchestral music, merging classical techniques with sounds emanating from the streets of New York. This style produced genre-bending works, including his rap symphony and concertos for electric guitar, piano, violin, and a double concerto for violin and cello featured on 2011 albums Urbanicity and String Theory. His solo piano album, The New York Rags, was cited by the Absolute Sound as being one of the best piano albums ever recorded. Chesky's ballets, including Hope, commissioned by and toured by Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, as well as his Central Park dances, Urbanicity, and the New York Variations, reflect modern life in a fast city. His full-length children's ballets, The Zephyrine and The Snow Bears of Lake Louise, explore fantasy worlds while reinforcing the importance of cultural diversity and acceptance. His comedic adult operas, La Faranucci, Juliet and Romeo, and The Pig, The Farmer, and The Artist have left audiences in laughter-filled tears. Opera News praised that Chesky could turn out to be a one-man Brecht Weill for the 21st century. Internationally renowned, Chesky served as the composer in residence for the National Symphony of Taiwan, and in 2023 was the featured composer at the Dresden Festival with his White Rose Trilogy oratorio. His children's opera, The Mice War, has been performed in Poland and at the National Theater of Taiwan in Chinese to sold-out audiences. With this positive response, the libretto has been translated into Polish, Italian, and Portuguese, and the DVD received accolades at the Newport Beach Film Festival, Dallas Kid Film Festival, and the Madrid International Film Festival, and since has been turned into a full-length animated film. Chesky is committed to fostering music education in young children, fully aware that our audiences tomorrow depend on introducing classical music to today's youth. Consequently, Chesky created the album Classical Cats, a fun, endearing story that gives children an introduction to the orchestra and classical music, awarded Dr. Toy's recognition of excellence. The Mice War reached an international acclaim as an opera and film, and his children's ballet Zephyrine was reviewed as intended for children, but musically sophisticated. Chesky is also the author of The Snow Bears of Lake Louise, a book and audiobook that educates children about the importance of preserving the environment. Miami native, Chesky moved to New York in 1974 to officially begin his career as a musician. With an interest in both classical and jazz, he immediately began studying composition with Pulitzer Prize winner David Del Tredici and piano with John Lewis of the Modern Jazz Quartet. His blending of genres was first reflected in the culmination of his big band, the David Chesky Big Band, where he performed at every major jazz club and festival, including the Village Vanguard, Storyville, and the Newport, JVC, and Monterey Jazz Festivals. Still active as a jazz pianist today, Chesky plays and composes for his new group, Jazz in the New Harmonic, incorporating 12-tone and contemporary classical harmonies into jazz, and his Grammy-nominated Latin jazz fusion, The Body Acoustic. David's latest jazz trio album is The Great European Songbook, in which he reharmonizes the music of Bach, Beethoven, and Chopin and sets them to a jazz palette. Besides being a composer, David is a pioneer and respected worldwide leader in the field of audio technology. He is the founder of the audiophile label Chesky Records, producing the highest quality of recordings available today. Chesky Records has produced over 500 albums with highly accomplished artists in genres spanning classical, jazz, and world music. In 2007, he opened hdtracks.com, the world's premier online download service that delivers high sound quality in AIFF, FLAC, and 192 kilohertz 24-bit high-resolution files. David's latest technology venture is the Audiophile Society, where he is developing his own proprietary way to create 3D audio for two-channel audio system for a more immersive listening experience. Chesky currently resides in New York City with his wife, Brazilian actress Patricia Dinelli, is that right?
Yeah.
And their two children, Luca and Paloma, the youngest of whom is a rising singer in the music industry. So quite a varied background and life that you've been leading.
Yeah, but you know, next week I'm being certified to be a dog walker as well.
Well, just one more thing.
I can't get through the tests.
Yeah.
And I also want to apologize for this cold. I just got off the road and I get the usual airplane cold traveling all the time.
Yeah, so no worries.
Mm.
Yeah, that's an incredible amount of varied work that you've done. But I just wanted to start by asking how you went from, learning piano from the age of 5 to deciding I want to actually write music, not just play it.
You know, it just happens. I wish there was something to tell you. It's sort of like, why do people want to become priests or rabbis? It's a calling, there's something I wanted to do. I mean, I do like science and technology, don't get me wrong. I have totally my foot in there, but I like to create things and I have fun in that genre as well. I also like that genre because in classical music, people are as Slaminsky says, opposed to the unfamiliar, the unacceptance of the unfamiliar, where in technology, people want something new all the time. I say that in classical music, 100 years old is new. Technology, 24 hours, it's old already. So that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so I know that you studied with some teachers in New York City when you first moved here. What were the things that you learned most from them early on?
I have to tell you, the best institution in the world for learning anything is New York City itself, because it's very simple. You walk outside, you walk into a concert hall, the greatest composers, artists, musicians are right there. You see it and you say to yourself, okay, that's what I have to do. And you just have to go figure out and do it. There's no magic wand that does, and you're just exposed to it. New York in itself is the university.
Yeah. Yeah, and I saw that you did a lot of work early on in like TV and film. Was there any projects that you particularly remember from that time that were like kind of weird?
I orchestrated a lot of movies and TV shows, and that was the best experience, because it's sort of like saying you can't go to a classroom and teach somebody how to ride a bicycle. So you got to get on a bike and ride it. So when I was an orchestrator, they would say, okay, we need 2 minutes in the style of Brahms, 2 minutes in the style of Stravinsky, Duke Ellington. So you're just doing it all day and you're building it up, the muscles to do that. I think anybody who wants to do this has to do that. It's basically a craft, like learning to make, shoes as a peddler. Same thing.
Yeah. So what do you think, just if to use that metaphor, what are the materials that you use as a composer?
I don't know. You know what? I think an artist takes the world, art has to reflect time and culture for me. I mean, so you take the world around you, you swallow it and you regurgitate it. I don't live in some idyllic Swiss Alps town with a cow and a beautiful, I live in the middle of Manhattan, where the metaphor is not, you don't need Sartre to write a novel on the metaphor. The metaphor is you get on a subway and the guy says, get out of my face, So my music is very rhythmic because it reflects this city. I like rhythm. I also am very perplexed that for some reason classical music, it kind of shuns rhythm. We use percussion as ornamentation, but not actual rhythm. And we live in a world of rhythm. And in the old days, Bach and these dance, all that were dances. That was the rhythm of their time. So for me, I'm very attracted to rhythm in a lot of the works I do. I mean, I do write a lot of sacred works as well, and those are very slow, but that's what I want to do. I like to reflect my city. I love New York City. I ride my bicycle everywhere. It's got this energy. It is, everything. It's diverse, and I just want to capture that.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. I definitely
and it has an edge. It's not a polite place. It has an edge.
Yeah, but I liked your point about rhythm, because I do find yeah, like I sing a lot of Baroque music, and it's so rhythmic. Like I mean, it was the pop music of its day, but it
Yeah.
feels like, you know, a hip hop song in terms of how it makes your body want to move. And I do think that's something that, yeah, I see that people moving away from that in newer works. And yeah, it's too bad that that's the case. I also see in opera in particular, I think what's interesting about your work is that you've written a lot of comedies, which is also something that I feel like opera has moved away from, uh, in the past century. Like I just feel like so many of the new operas written are very serious, which that's fine. But I like performing comedies a lot, so I think it's really great that you're writing operas about the comedic genres. And yeah, could you talk a little bit about that and what makes you want to veer more towards the comedic side of things?
Well, you know what? It's very simple. Music is like Baskin and Robbins. There's a lot of flavors. I don't like to have vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. I need that peanut butter, brittle, strawberries crunch. I like comedies because they're fun. I've written a lot of sad works on the Holocaust. I mean, The White Rose is kind of as sad as it gets that they did in Dresden on the life of Sophie Scholl. But I like comedy. I mean, the world's a comedy around us now. We could look at the world now. We could say it's a tragedy, or you can step back in an Ionesco fashion and say it's absurd. I mean, so it's how you want to perceive what's going on. I perceive everything as a comedy because, this whole concept of depth and meaning, it doesn't exist when you realize that we cannot escape our destiny, and that's death. So what is the meaning of life? So just laugh at it, you know.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed you also write, I think for every piece, every vocal, like dramatic work or comedic work, you tend to write your own libretto. Is that true in all cases, or
Yeah.
yeah? So I mean, not every composer, wants to do that or has the maybe the skills to do that, but what do you enjoy about also being the librettist? And
I just, you know what? This is just entertaining myself, maybe warding off future dementia. I don't know. But I like to sit down and write. I like to ponder. I like to write the words. It's just the process. I enjoy it. It's, you know, it's onanism, basically. I enjoy this. This is what I do for fun. I don't play golf, I don't play tennis. This is my hobby and what I enjoy. So it's as simple as that. Maybe my librettos and music are the worst. It doesn't matter. It's just to entertain myself.
well, that's great. I think it's important to spend your time doing something that makes you like you enjoy. And I think if you enjoy it, people generally do. I admit, I saw La Faranucci in Brooklyn. What year was that?
1952 or 53?
That was before you were born. So yeah, I saw it. It was, I don't know, it was like a few years ago,
Right.
but I don't remember a lot of it now, like specifically, but I just really remember being like entertained the whole time. Like I feel like it kept my attention and it made me laugh, and I think that's great. I don't think, I love that it's about having fun. Like I don't think opera always has to be serious, right? Certainly for much of its history was not always intended to be super serious. So that's really cool. I'm curious though, also how do you how do you go about choosing your source material or subject matter when what inspires you enough to be like, oh, I want to turn that into an opera?
The idea just pops in my head. Walking in Central Park, idea pops in my head. I'm bored. Boredom is a great catalyst for creativity.
Uh-huh.
So that's how it happens. I wish there was another way, but I'm sure it happens for everybody like that.
Sure, but then once you have the like initial seed of the idea, do you do like how do you progress that? Like do you just sit down and start writing, or
I sit down and write, and I write a little every day, and at the end of a month, there's a lot. It's like whittling wood. You just keep doing it
mm-hmm.
every day. I write, and I come back and write later in the day, and in little segments, I'm probably, like that. But it gets done, you know. So writing an opera, if you look at it and say I have to write 2 hours, it's a lot. But if you say I'll write a minute a day, you know, it's done in a few months.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Many things. um, yeah, and so I've seen you've done also a lot to try to promote classical music for children and you know, just the future in general. Um, what do you feel like? What are some things that you feel like we as classical musicians should be doing more to help the art form and to help, yeah, to help bring it to people and make sure it really continues to be something that we as a society value?
Well, the first thing is this: culture is not a commodity. If you go to Italy, they're not commoditizing their culture. Their operas, it's their culture. You go to Brazil, samba is their culture. We need to preserve our culture. We don't educate kids in school anymore. When I was a kid, you had the little bell class singing whatever it was. It doesn't exist. So where are they going to learn about it? Okay. And then you have large corporations. They want to get you into pop music as quick as they can there. So what I'm trying to do, and as a matter of fact, I'm animating one of my ballets now in Europe, but I want to get kids into classical music. You have to get kids and expose them 4, 5, and 6 years old. If you don't, you lose them. And here's the thing. I am not advocating that they all become musicians, but you know what? If 100% of them are exposed to it, maybe 90% will say it's not for me. And all we need is 10% to survive. And maybe 0.1% will be musicians. But the thing is, you have to look at this as a business as well. In order to survive, you need new people coming in, okay? And when I go to a concert hall, unfortunately, it's not like that anymore, okay? When I go to Asia, I see a lot of young people. They're Europe more, America way less, okay? Um, this is very important because if we don't bring kids into the hall, eventually this is going to has to collapse. Okay, the next generation of venture capitalist philanthropists did not grow up in Europe. You know, the people who came in
Mm-hmm.
concert halls were European. This was their music. They brought it over. This generation of philanthropists are rock and roll people. They grew up in rap and rock and roll, and they're going to build rock and roll museums like you see they're doing now. So how are we going to do this? So the only way to do it is what I would like to do is with my classical cats is get every orchestra just to give it away. I'm going to put it online for free now, but it has to be done because otherwise the entire ecosystem is going to collapse. It's just no way around it, okay? If you don't educate kids, if you don't show them this is a nice form of entertainment, they're not going to come to it, you know. I mean, maybe a few will, but um, I find that this is in jazz as well. You know, it's really weird that jazz was created in this country, and if you're a jazz pianist, you make your living in Europe and Asia, which is crazy. But for some reason, the urban communities of this country have forsaken jazz, and it's been supplanted by rap and other forms of popular music, and now jazz is dead. If you go up to some kid in the urban center of a city and say, who's Charlie Parker and Duke Ellington, they're going to look at you like, what are you talking about? And this should be taught in school because jazz is an American indigenous culture, and we need to preserve it, but we don't. So that's a problem there. So look, I'm not an educator. I'm not running the school system. I mean, but maybe it'll be a school board soon. I mean, whatever that's going on in Washington. But the reality is the classical community needs to consolidate, needs to sit down seriously and say, how are we going to educate every kid in this country in elementary school and expose them to these two great art forms, classical music and jazz? And since I'm bantering more, I'm going to banter more. I believe there's a correlation. The way you can get people to do this is I think kids who study music do better in school in math and science. And our country really needs that right now because we're not going to keep up with the Chinese. Okay. When you go over to Asia, they're smart, they're studious. You walk down the street, every kid's playing the violin in the window. It's like it was here in the 50s. So for this country to compete, we need to really get our youth, and this is more important than getting my opera in the Met or something. We need to get these kids exposed to this music and into this art form and to preserve this art form. Otherwise, it's just going to wither away. It's going to be a form of Darwinism where it just withers away.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's ultimately, yeah, very true. And I think it's great that you're working on that. Yeah, the your piece for orchestra was the classical cats.
Mhm.
I'm curious to know more about that. I mean, like how in what way is it written so that it helps to get kids
It's
involved
on,
excited
it's,
about classical music?
it's on YouTube now. And
Uh-huh.
just there, and it's basically it's an introduction to the orchestra. It's these funny cats. They say this is what a clarinet is the bassoon. They're joking around. It's and I need to animate it because we
Mhm.
live in a world that the word has been supplanted by the image, and nobody reads
Sure.
or listens anymore. So I need images, but it teaches kids about the instruments, and then we have like the Nutcracker and some fun things on there, and it shows them what an orchestra is. But the main thing is they need to be exposed to this. Where are they going to be exposed to this?
Yeah. Yeah, the I know when I was in school, we still had a music class at least once a week, maybe even more, where we would sing. And I know that that's not the case anymore. In many cases, I do some teaching, and many of my students, like, that's the only um, music they get is what their private lessons with me. But of course, not everyone can afford to do that for their own kids. So yeah, it's definitely changing. I think it's also interesting what you mentioned about, it being part of the culture and not commodified. I definitely see that when I go. I've been going to Germany more frequently, and I have some work coming up there, and yeah, it's just part of the culture. Like and it's of course also funded by the state, so they put a certain importance on preserving it, um, which we don't quite have the same resources here. Um,
Well, we have the resources to
well,
just
yeah,
allocate it. I mean,
right.
look, you know what? At the end of the day, you get the culture you deserve, and that's it. And I don't have a lot of time, but I could sit here and banter on. If you look at even how popular music has changed in the last 70, 80 years, I mean, that's another story in itself. How I think it parallels literature, I think it parallels film, I think it parallels education, and I also think it parallels civilizations like Rome and Athens, and every civilization has its ups and downs. And
Mm.
we're not immune to this unless we take serious action,
Yeah.
learn by history's mistakes. I mean,
And what do you feel our job is? So on a bigger scale, obviously, you agree that, like, musicians need to be helping to promote classical music or it will die. But then what do you feel like the place of a musician is in society itself? Like, why is music important to exist in a functioning society?
well, you know what? I think this is like a neuroscience question, but first of all, let me get back to the first thing. It's not really the musician's job to promote it. We have artistic administrators and CEOs of orchestras and
Sure.
this thing, whatever it's called, the league of orchestras. They need to sit down and organize and figure out a way in a very business-like fashion to educate kids. That's that. But I do think music is part of us. I sometimes go to the park, and they have all the drummers out there on the weekends, and they're playing in the park. And you see these little kids, and they start looking at these drummers, and they just stare. And after 5 or 10 minutes, they start dancing. And it's very curious because they're 3 years old, and nobody says to the kid, when the music plays, you dance. It's something organic in us. And I think it's in our nervous system to respond to frequencies and rhythms. And it's just part of our ontology as human beings to like music and respond to it. It's an international thing. Anywhere you go in the world, music is developed in its own, genre and taste, but they love it everywhere. You go to Brazil, it's something that everybody does. I mean, you want to see passion. I mean, here people go and attend a concert. In Brazil, samba and bossa nova, it's part of your everyday life. People play, they go after work and they play in these samba schools. It's the center of the community. Instead of, it's like a church here, they have a samba school and they have thousands of members and they all go and they all play, and it's the communal thing, and it is so entrenched in their life, so we just don't have this here, but we need this. But like I said, I think music is something that neuroscience is just part of being what's called human.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, that might be a good place to end, unless there's anything else you wanted to talk about.
If anybody needs a dog walked, in 2 weeks I'm going to be certified. I'll be a dog walker. I have my dog, and I figure since I'm in the park every day with my dog, why not take another 40?
And
we could subsidize my opera. You take 30 dogs, $50 each.
right.
Today, you'll be the next Bill Gates.
Well, lots of singers have dogs, so they should take you up for it, because really, in a roundabout way, it'll be paying their salary someday.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So if you need a dog walker, David Chesky. If you also need a piece to help introduce kids to music, David Chesky, and many other work.
Classical Cats. They can find it on the website.
Yeah, Classical Cats. And the piece I'm singing is Songs of New York, song number 5, which I'm very excited about. And actually, I did want to ask you that the sort of interesting thing about that piece is that there are no words. And I was curious why, you talked about it a little bit, but like why you decided to write it in that way without any text.
Because, I'm fascinated with Baroque music. Baroque music for singers is the epitome of virtuosity. I mean, it's just incredible what they would do back there in Venice. So there's a connection, when you listen to it, there's a real connection between that music and jazz. I mean, it's sort of like the jazz of its day. So I said, first of all, it's really difficult to write words when, the tempos are 160. So that really doesn't cut it. And, all those women would sing la, 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 la. So I just wanted to do the same thing and saying, look, since it's going to be this fast and it's virtuoso singing, pick whatever vowel you like, and just, it lets the singer have a little leeway. It's not this thing we're saying, oh my God, I want the 30-second note legato and I want the whole note staccato. It's not telling the musician what to do. It's saying, pick a vowel, be free with it, and then just enjoy the process.
Great. Yeah. And we love that as singers. And I mean, that's something I, do truly love about singing like Baroque or also bel canto music, is that there is a little bit of flexibility and room to be a co-creator. So that's really cool. And I'm really looking forward to singing the piece. Thank you for writing it. And thank you for speaking with me today.
Awesome. And it was a pleasure. And I look forward to seeing you in like 2 weeks, right?
Yeah. Great.
Right. You're the best.
Thanks.
Thanks for taking the time.